All right, cool. We're back. Live Q&A. We got a couple questions posted in. We got a couple good ones. We're just going to focus on one this morning so we can dig in a little bit. So this question, how you doing, Matt?
Good, man.
Good.
Sorry. I think I'm off. Hold on.
Oh, he's got to turn his microphone on.
Turn my back on. Sorry.
There we go. All right, so this question came in.
Okay.
Essentially, what is the difference between we talked a little bit about boasting the Lord and kind of putting everything on Him, right, and lifting up what He's done rather than what we can do for ourselves.
Right.
So what's the difference between boasting in the Lord, which is biblical, and having self-righteous pride in the church or your own relationship with Him, kind of like we mentioned, in terms of like talking about your own relationship with God or how He's used them, like used you,
Yeah.
or what God is doing in and through them. So how do you balance that between like boasting in the Lord truly, but not being the guy who's like humble bragging about how awesome they are because of what God's done? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say humble bragging is a good expression of that. Yeah.
Right.
I would say if it's by you in any way, shape, and form, and it's for you in any way, shape, and form, then you've got a small amount of whatever your own pride is in that boasting.
Sure. Yeah.
So if it's by you because of your involvement in whatever it is, if it's because of your involvement in whatever it is, then or it's for you in the end result, then at some point you have to admit that that's about you. Well, yeah, we can paint the God paint all over it, but the root of it is still going to be there. So I look at it and go, well, when we boast, I think that righteous boasting, that boasting about what God's doing, I think that is always in spite of us. And I think it's always in light of what He wants to accomplish, not necessarily what He wants to do in me. So that's a simple way, but I don't look at it any other differently. Say, look, if I'm going to talk about how awesome God is, then it has nothing to do with how awesome I am.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with me being involved in the picture. And at the end of the day, whether I'm in the end result or not, like I'm only in the end result by His grace. So it's all God.
And then it kind of comes down to a motive too. Like, are you talking about what God did in a certain situation because of how you're going to appear or how you're going to come out? You know what I mean? Like, oh, I helped this guy because he was in a dire situation or he was in a really tough place and like you want, like in your own heart that you want to share this story because
it's a motive,
you know what I mean? Yeah. So you got to check yourself there, I guess, too. But
then look at Paul. What did Paul say about when he was talking about preachers who preach with false motives?
Yeah.
And then he's like, but the gospel's being preached, so I don't care. It wasn't like he was saying it's okay.
Right.
It was him saying specifically, look, at the end of the day, if the gospel's being preached, even if that guy's motive's wrong, God's gonna deal with him on his motive being wrong. So I kind of look at the same thing and say, look, if you're boasting and it's all about God, but you're doing it with a motive that's false, then I would probably say, look, that's fine. I think people are still going to hear how awesome God is, but God's going to deal with your own heart in terms of motive.
And I feel like if your perspective and your thought is that passage in John, He must increase as I decrease. He must become more as I become less. Like if that's where you're coming from, I don't think you're going to have too many situations where that's going to crop up because if that's what you're searching for, or that's what you're building towards, and that's what you're trying to become more and more of as a person, you're likely not going to.
And the idea that there's no boasting, but there's also no limping, right? That comes from not because we're not going to struggle. So the struggle side of it is saying, look, the limping side of it is the same thing. Like there will be times that I boast because it's just who I am. I'm going to do that. I'm going to boast, and it's going to be about me. And then I'm going to be convicted by it. I'm going to deal with it. Yeah. And then there's other times I'm going to boast that it's all about God. There's going to be times where I struggle, and I'm limping along. That's still not where God wants me to be. And then there's going to be times that, like, based on circumstances, I should be worse off, and yet because of who He is, I'm not. Yep. And that's where I look at it and go, that's where the boasting and limping comes in. Mm-hmm. That's where it's like, look, God's freedom and power keeps this from happening, but it can also keep this from happening.
Right.
But I think as a church, we've just accepted it more that, like, look, somebody wrote in about the Ephesians 1:18 passage about, let me just go back and read it really quickly, but it's basically our hearts will be flooded with light so that we can understand the confident hope that He's given us. He's called us, His holy people, with rich and glorious inheritance, and that's true. But the reality is that He's called us all those things and given us all those things because He's amazing, for His purposes, not ours.
And He doesn't bless His people so that we can be set on high and look down on everybody else. It's the whole idea of blessed to be a blessing. Right?
Yeah. Same with Abraham, same with all. It started with him. We're going to bless you so you can bless others.
Yeah, the purpose of God doing what He did in Abraham's life was not so that Abraham would be. Abraham was not a king.
Oh, no.
Right? He wasn't this person who became whatever, but he was someone who set into motion God's story.
Yes.
Right?
Right, exactly.
And that's exactly what it comes back to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for writing in, guys. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Hit us up, QnA@thejourneyline.com, or text us questions you got anytime. And we'll see you next week for part 2 of Dealing with Regret and Shame.
Thanks.
See ya.